Hi guys. Okay, so I made a list of all of the canning questions you guys asked, and I'm just going to go through the list in order and answer them. Some of them were asked twice or really similar questions, so if your exact answer isn't there, that's why. I am outside. The kids are playing on the slip and slide. Abigail is in her jumper. You might hear cars drive by because we live right off the highway. So I'm just going to go through this list, answer them as simple as I can and as quick as I can, and try to not make this too long. So the first one I got was, I'm afraid to can what I eat. To eat what I can. As long as you followed the instructions from a trusted resource, which the trusted resources I use are the Ball Canning Book. Okay. Okay. Or the National Food Safety Canning, something like that. I'll put a link to it in the bottom. But it's the National Canning website, and they have recipes for almost everything. And then another book I use is called Food in Jars. If it came from one of the three of those and you followed the directions, you're fine. Don't be afraid. If the seal broke, don't eat it. If it smells off, don't eat it. But otherwise, you should be just fine. Someone asked, how do you can pickles, salsa, and tomatoes? So all three of those, you'll find recipes on either of those places I just said. Pickles, you're basically just going to pack your pickles and your onion and garlic and spices in a jar, and then pour a hot vinegar brine over them, and then can them. Salsa, you have to use a approved salsa recipe, which you'll find on either of those three places. And then tomatoes, you can do whole, crushed, sauce, stewed. There's like a million ways you can do tomatoes, but it's really easy. And tomatoes, if you have a garden and you're only getting a couple at a time, you can totally freeze your tomatoes until you have enough to can, and then can them all at once. Can I do everything in a water bath canner? Do I need a thermostat? And do I have to cook food before canning? You cannot do everything in a water bath canner. Water bath is only for high acid foods. So pickles, tomatoes, fruit, jams, I think that's about it. Syrups, a lot of fruit, any fruit products, pickled things, and tomato products. You can water bath things like green beans, potatoes, meat, beans, any of that kind of stuff, soups, stews. You have to have a pressure canner. And for water bath canning, you don't need a actual water bath canner. Just a big stock pot will work. You just have to be able to put enough water in that your jars are totally covered by water when it's boiling. And then you need a rack for the bottom, which you can buy a rack, or you can use the rings for the canning jars on the bottom, fill the bottom with rings and set your jars on that. Do you need a thermostat? No. Do I have to cook food before canning? So there's raw pack and hot pack. Meat, I raw pack so you don't cook it. A lot of fruit I raw pack because I feel they get mushy if you hot pack them. Your recipe book will say whether or not they can be hot packed or raw packed. And if they can be raw packed, I almost always go that route because it's just less steps and I feel the food turns out better. How to can meat. So you have to pressure can meat. It's so simple. Canned meat kind of looks freaky, but it's so good and so simple. So we normally, when we get an elk or a deer, all of the scrap pieces that are inedible, we just grind into ground meat. This year I cubed it and I pressure canned it. It was so tender and so good. We ate it all, and it makes for such a quick meal. If you want beef stroganoff but you don't have meat thawed, you can just open a jar and throw it in. So to pressure can meat, you cut whatever your meat is according to the instructions. So for elk, it was like 1-inch cubes. I filled the jars. I want to say it was a 1-inch headspace, which is how much space you have in the jar between the food and the top of the jar. And then a teaspoon of salt and no liquid. Put your lids on and then you pressure can it. And there will be liquid in the jar when you're done because it draws all the juices out of the meat. And it turns out super good. Chicken, I did like chicken thighs and drumsticks. You just pack them in the jar, no liquid, add some salt if you want, put the lids on, pressure can them, and then you're left with broth in the jar and then your meat. Recipes, I get all my recipes from those 3 places I listed. So I really, truly, if you are canning, you need to have at least the Ball canning book or the website that I'll link. Can you dry can? So yes, I kind of already talked about this. Some things you can, some things you can't. Like vegetables, you couldn't just put vegetables in a jar with no liquid and can them. But meat you can. So some things you can, some things you can't. Salsa, water bath or pressure can. Salsa can be either. As long as you're following an approved recipe, you can water bath can or pressure can it. So if all you have is a water bath canner, you're fine. Best tomatoes for salsa. Paste tomatoes are the best, but really you can use any tomato. Pickles, I kind of already covered that. What do you use canned potatoes for? So you can use them for mashed potatoes. You can just open them and roast them. You can open them, slice them, and grill them. Basically anything you would do with a regular potato, and you can do with canned potatoes. Yeah, and it's really convenient because when you're making soup or something, potatoes are always the longest to cook. So if you have them canned, they're already mostly cooked, and so you can just throw them in. Mushy pickles. So you want really small cucumbers for making pickles. The smaller the cucumber, the crispier they're going to be. Soaking them in an ice bath before you can them will help them stay crispy. And then some people swear by adding black tea leaves or grape leaves to their pickle jars to keep them crispy, but I don't have any personal experience with that. Someone asked, best return on investment for canning. Definitely dried beans. You can buy a bag of dried beans for $1. Once you can them, you end up with I think it's 12 cans of beans, which if you think in the grocery store, they're about $1 a piece where I live, so that would be $12 for that same thing that cost you $1. And beans are really easy to can, and you have to have a pressure canner for beans. Things you wouldn't think to can, but you can. I mean, you can pickle about anything. You can can soups, which a lot of people don't think of. You can can chilies. Meat, I think, is the biggest. People are shocked when you tell them you can can meat if they don't know anything about canning. How to can potatoes. So normally you would peel and dice your potatoes. If you saw the picture of my canned potatoes, I did not peel them. That is because I dug them up and they were about this big. So you can literally just rub the peel off with your finger. So the peel is not thick like it would be on a regular full-size potato, so I just made the decision not to peel them. But if you are doing full-size potatoes, I would definitely peel them. And you just peel them, dice them, put them in your jars, put a teaspoon of salt, cover them with boiling water, and then you have to pressure can them. And I'm not going to tell you times on pressure canning or weights, pressure canning or water bath, because that depends where you live. I am high elevation, and so I have to add time or pressure to all of my canning recipes because of our elevation. But the ball book and the website will tell you both of those things. How to can peaches. So peaches, you will peel, slice them, pit them, and then you can either do a light syrup, which is less sugar, or a medium or heavy syrup, which is more sugar, and then you can water bath them. Peaches are really easy to do, and a little trick for peeling them is if you put them in boiling water for like 30 seconds, and then in an ice bath, you can just grab them and the skins will peel right off. Same with tomatoes. Easiest thing to start with would be whole fruit or fruits or jams. Are both really easy. Pickles are also really easy. Pretty much anything that can be water bath canned is going to be your easiest bet. Is it expensive to get started? Water bath canning is not, because you can mostly use what you have at home, as long as you have jars and a big stock pot. Pressure canners run about $100. I would say they're well worth their investment. I actually ended up with 3 somehow, which I do appreciate having, so I can run all 3 at the same time instead of having to do one, another. So you have to have a pressure canner for low acid things. You don't for high acid things. So for water bath canning, no, it is not expensive. You do have to get new lids every time you can. Not the rings, but the flat lid part need to be new each time you can something, because the seal will go bad after using it the first time, so you don't want to reuse it. You can reuse it for like storage for dry goods and stuff, but canning, you don't want to reuse them. Do I need to buy anything extra? Most likely no, unless you're pressure canning, which look around if you do want a pressure can. I know our local grocery stores are like $70 on sale usually. I've seen them at the thrift stores. I've seen them on Facebook Marketplace. So you can buy them secondhand. If you do that, and even if you don't, you will want to take your gauge and have it tested by either your local extension office, or see if you can mail it into the company that you bought it from, because you want to make sure that it is accurate, because that's important, obviously. Pressure canning is not scary. I thought it was at first. It's not. If you watched my how to can dried beans video, I kind of walk you through how to use a pressure canner. Once you do it once, you're like, oh, this isn't scary, this is easy. It's definitely worth learning how to do. I'm sad I took so long to do it. I had a pressure canner for like 3 years before I finally used it, and now that I have, I prefer it to water bath canning. Yeah, so that's all your guys' questions. If you have any follow-up questions, just leave them in the comments. It's important to follow recipes that are safe, for the safety of yourself and whoever's eating your food. Some people choose not to. I am not one of those people. Do what you feel comfortable with for your family, but I will always follow approved methods of canning. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like this video, and let me know if you have more questions.